So it is 10 o'clock, and because I like to be on time, why don't we go ahead and begin?
Okay.
So this is a Facebook Live broadcast sponsored by the Antiochian Department of Missions and Evangelism. I am Father John Finley, and I am substituting for our regular host, Deacon Adam Lowell Finian Roberts. So I don't have as many names as he does, Father John. And our special guest today is Father Matthew Thurman. And Father Matthew, you are at St. Luke Church in, is it Solano? Where is it?
Chagrin Falls.
Chagrin Falls, okay.
So it's near it's near Solon, Ohio, and that's all
Solon. That's what I was thinking.
Cleveland suburbs, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a Cleveland area, and you've got, how many churches did you tell me? You've got like 30 Orthodox churches in the greater Cleveland area.
Yes.
I suspect that some of the parishioners tend to float around somewhat from church to church.
Yes.
We used to call them cream sifters. Go sift the cream, go get the honey, and go to the next flower.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a problem. And we're interviewing you because we hope that you have a solution for that.
Well, I guess I would say I have something to offer. I would say I don't have a corner on the market of incorporating people into the parish, but I mean, this is an approach that I've worked through in the last several years. I've been at St. Luke about 10 years now, and what occurs to me, and this came out in some of my conversations with Deacon Adam, and which led to this this interview, is it seems that when people come to our parishes, in general, we need to take a very intentional approach to incorporating people into the life of the parish. And what we tend to be more familiar with is inquirers who will come, and people who are not Orthodox, interested in joining the church. And so in smaller parishes and missions, we tend to focus a lot on that. And so in the process of inquirers and catechumens, we tend to be very intentional about that. But if we are in a circumstance where someone who is already Orthodox comes to our parish, we might have a tendency to say, well, they know what the church is all about. They kind of have shown up, so they're good. And we don't really take an intentional approach of saying, well, are we incorporating them into the life of the parish? So what I developed here was a process just based on my experience. And it was one of those things where trying to do something consistently over time and realizing over time that this process that was in my head, I tended to be a little hit and miss about. So I said, well, I need to actually get this on paper and organize it and have something that I can look at consistently and say, am I taking care of all of the things to try and help this family, this new family that's showing up, become a part of the parish. And so I've worked on a document, and I know that in my conversation with Deacon Adam, we're hoping to have this put together as a PDF that would be available through the Missions and Evangelism website. So other parishes could look at it and say, well, is this something that'll work in our context?
So that's going to be shared later on. I think you're going to send that to Deacon Adam, and he's going to post it on our either our website or the Facebook or both. Right?
Correct. That's the conversation.
Very good. By the way, if you're listening and watching, and you have a question for Father Matthew, I'm monitoring the comments, and I can forward that to Father Matthew. So keep going, Father.
Okay, so I guess I'll just kind of walk through what this process looks like overall, and we can kind of get into the details if we want to. And of course, if people have questions, we can parse those out as well. In my experience, an Orthodox family who's coming to the parish and is interested in becoming a part of the parish, they usually just will show up at Sunday liturgy. It's not as if they'll call in advance or email. I mean, sometimes that happens, but more often than not, we'll have Sunday liturgy and there's a family there. And so what I will do when I see visitors in our liturgy is at the end of the liturgy, we have our announcements. I'll make a general announcement. I'll just say, I noticed we have some visitors today. Please, you're welcome to stay for coffee hour afterwards. And I would like to personally greet you at coffee hour. And so that extends an invitation for them to stay. It recognizes that they're there without calling them out. Because I know that there have been studies and research about, and some churches have tried where they'll say, well, we have visitors. Can all the visitors stand up? Can you please share your name with us in liturgy? And it can be an awkward thing, but
that's what my father was a Southern Baptist minister,
mm-hmm.
and in Southeast Oklahoma in the 60s, you could get away with that. But in the culture that we live in now, I think that there's wisdom in what you're saying, and even to train the greeters to bring them to you, mm-hmm. because they've probably already met them when they came in, mm-hmm. And then if the greeter can kind of grab them and say, hey, I want to introduce you to our pastor, yes, Father Matthew, and that's actually a kind of proper deference and mm-hmm. proper protocol, so that you don't feel like you're running out into the coffee hour chasing them down.
Yeah. Well, in our circumstance as a small parish, and the confession time here, we don't have a robust method of greeting at this point in our parish. It's on my list of something to develop. But how I do approach this is after the announcements, we finish up liturgy, people come up and kiss the cross. Of course, I consume the chalice, put my vestments away. The very first priority for me going into coffee hour is to meet those parishioners. And so I will come and have just a basic conversation, welcome, very top level sorts of things. Are you just traveling through the area visiting? Did you just move here? And in the course of that conversation, you get an idea of what their circumstance is. And so if it's an Orthodox family who says, we've just moved to the area and we're looking for a parish to join, that will come out in that conversation. And a practice I have, and I share it at that point in the conversation, is, well, any visitors that come to the parish, I like to meet with them over coffee later on in the week. And so I would like to do that. And may I have your phone number or an email address so we can arrange that. So it's the sort of thing where they're not pressured in the moment of committing to doing something. I'm not pressured right after liturgy of having to track them down or schedule something. And then very quickly after that, just assessing their background and their circumstance, I will introduce them to someone in the parish who has a similar circumstance. So if it's a family with young children, I'll introduce them to a family with young children. If they're a certain profession, I'll see if we have someone of that profession in the parish, and essentially give them a handoff and say, we'll talk with this parishioner, enjoy coffee hour.
Using the principle that like attracts like.
Yes. And the thing, it's like, if I'm coming to this parish, are there people like me here? And so trying to identify that. And so, that's what happens Sunday at liturgy. And then very soon after Sunday liturgy, usually on Monday or Tuesday, I will reach out to that family and schedule a time to meet for coffee. And part of the point there is I'll say, let's meet at a Starbucks or a Panera, someplace that's public, so that it's not come back to the church when I'm here all by myself and have a meeting with me, or I want to come to your house and meet with you. It's just, we'll go to Starbucks and have a conversation. It's very low key. You probably have noticed this when you go to a Starbucks, all kinds of different things are transacted at a Starbucks. I've been there when people have had job interviews. I've seen people like do mortgage agreements. So it's very common for people to just meet there as a public space to meet with someone else and have a conversation. So in that meeting, it's more of an opportunity for, one-on-one, get kind of a better sense of what's happening. And I will usually start the conversation with a focus on them as a family. Tell me more about yourself, tell me more about your family, where you've come from, what brought you to this area. And then I'll do, a brief introduction of myself. Well, I'm the priest here. I've been here this long. Here's my family, and you probably saw some of my family members at church. And I'll share a little bit about the parish. This is when we were started. This is kind of where we've been in the recent past. This is kind of what we're looking towards in the near future. And from that, we'll get a sense of where they are. And in those conversations, I will get a spectrum of responses. I think the best case scenario, and this has happened a few times, but not always, I'll have a family say, well, we've just decided we're going to join your parish. And how do we do that? I mean, they just kind of have that decision coming into the meeting. And that's probably the easiest one to negotiate. I've also had families that have said, well, we're new to the area. We know that there are other parishes. We're kind of interested in looking at what's possible. And they will go and they'll either say, you're one of the parishes we've already visited, or we plan on visiting parishes.
They go shopping.
Yeah, yeah. And so they I think in most instances when that's happened, I mean, it's just kind of nice when it happens. They'll say, well, we actually like your parish, and we would like to be a part of your parish. And then there are other instances where people will visit and they'll say, well, for whatever reason, we're just not interested in being a member of your parish. They may have chosen a different parish or something else.
What if you have this conversation and you find out that this person or this family lives in the Cleveland area,
mm-hmm.
and they announce to you, we've decided we're going to join your parish? I mean, does that set any kind of red flag or caution with you? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Well, in general, when I have an Orthodox family that comes, either from outside the area or someone who is already in the area, very early in the process, I'll find out where they've come from, and I'll have a conversation with the priest from where they're coming from. And so
you see my sign here?
Yes, I do.
That is very important, and
yes.
I'm glad you're doing that.
There's one of the nice things about the Cleveland area is there is a very strong clergy association. And so the clergy of the other Orthodox parishes here we do have a fairly high level of collegiality. And so if someone is coming to me from one of their parishes and they're just announcing, as you say, we want to be in your parish, there is something of a question mark there. It's like, well, is there a problem in the parish that they're avoiding? Is there something that's happening where it makes more sense for them to come over to my parish? But I like to have a conversation with their priest about that. And sometimes it's, were you aware they were considering this? Or it's, well, yes, there's something going on, and it would probably be helpful if they were in your parish. And so I try to have those conversations early on. Now, in the case of an Orthodox family who is coming from outside the area, I think it is important to contact the priest from the parish where they came from, because I know that for me, when a parishioner moves away, I'm concerned about a handoff. I feel a responsibility when a parishioner says, well, we're moving away. I make the effort of saying, well, what are the Orthodox parishes there? Do I know a priest in the area? Is there a parish I can recommend? And I'll even contact clergy, say, this family's coming, please look out for them. So I know that as a priest who has a parishioner leaving, they like to hear, my family has come to an area, they've settled, and they're participating in a parish. So I make a point of calling clergy too. This family's shown up, they said they want to be a member here, and they're being taken care of. And I typically get a positive response from the priest who hears that news.
Sometimes often I would say, I hearken back to a lot of things that I grew up with, as the son of a preacher man. Mm-hmm. And I remember, things that were done. And I can remember that when a person would want to join the church in the Southern Baptist back when I was a boy, things have changed so much now, you don't even know how things operate. But there was one of three ways that a person would join the church. They were either coming to accept Christ into their life for the first time, or they were coming by what was called a letter of transfer. In other words, they were already a member of the Southern Baptist Church, but they were going to transfer their membership, and that required a letter. And the third one was, if that were not possible, by a statement of faith. And I actually kind of like this idea of a letter of transfer.
Yeah.
In other words, something in writing that, a person comes and announces to us that they're an Orthodox Christian, and we don't know them from Adam. And like you say, we need to get on the phone and talk to their priest or whoever their pastor was before they showed up at our door, and say, who are these people? Is everything okay? Are they a member in good standing with the church? Could you just write us a brief note or letter to that effect?
Yes.
So do you have any procedures in place that you actually ask in writing for something like that? Or what do you think of that idea?
Well, I know that there are, in some mainline Protestant denominations, that they will take that approach, and I think that in general, being able to document things. I know that some people hear that and it's like, oh, it's kind of a procedure, a legalism, but it does help. And we do have to document in the case of the reception of converts. We have the whole question of when a convert comes to us, have they been baptized or not? And of course, the Archdiocese is very clear of, if people have been baptized in a certain other Christian group, and there's a very specific list of what groups, and can that be documented, we will accept them by chrismation. But I know that with inquirers and converts, that's one of the conversations I have there. It's like, well, where were you baptized, and can you document that? So I see the reasonableness of doing some sort of documenting of a transfer.
I have observed in situations, and because I've traveled all over the country for over 25 years. I think I can be general about this, but especially in major metropolitan areas where you have a multiplicity of Orthodox churches and people float around, and a lot of times it's because they're mad at their pastor.
Yes.
I'm gonna go find another church. I don't like
Yeah.
you anymore, and I've got plenty of choices out here, and I've got free will, and I'm gonna go join that church.
Yeah.
And the pastor may unwittingly trying to put a salve on the wound and say, "Oh, you're welcome here. Please come and join us." They're putting a salve on a wound that's not been cleansed.
Yes.
And wounds have to be cleansed. And it's not like we're saying that they shouldn't join, but there needs to be reconciliation.
Yes.
And then if it's agreed upon, yes, I think it's good that they go join their church after the reconciliation. But I think we should not be too quick. I mean, we need to have the same kind of conversation that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I really like what you're saying, because even if they say we're Orthodox, it's like, we need to sit down and talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And,
I mean,
go ahead.
Is a good example. This was a few years ago. I was contacted by a person, and they said, "I'm moving to the Cleveland area. I'm Orthodox, and I'd like to join your parish." And I said, "Okay, well," and usually there have been a few instances where that's happened, where people will contact me in advance. I typically say, "Well, come to Sunday liturgy. Let's meet in person." And so I direct them in that sense. I want to actually meet the person. But in this example, I said, "Well, where are you moving from?" And they said, "Well, I'm coming from this area." And then I'll parse it down even more, and I'll say, "Well, what parish are you going to? Are you a member of? And who's the priest there?" And in this particular conversation, the details got fuzzier. Well, it was in this area. I kind of attended these churches. I grew up Catholic. I joined the Orthodox Church here. And I tried to get at that. It's like, well, were you chrismated? And who chrismated you? And when did this occur? And the story stayed vague. And so the message that I got was, well, this is someone who wants to be a member of the parish, but they don't want to go to the trouble of actually being chrismated. And nothing had been done in their instance. And so I just said, well, when you get to the area, let's meet, let's talk more. I need to understand this better. I need to talk to the priest from the parish you're coming from. And
I have a rule
boundary.
I have a rule with Orthodox Christians. It's an inquiry, and I ask a question, and I count to 3.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your bishop? 1, 2, 3. If they don't answer that in 3 seconds, that's a cautionary flag for me.
Mm-hmm.
They're really, when we have Orthodox Christians, they come and visit our church. They get in the communion line. They come up in the communion line. I'm ready, servant of God. We ask them because we don't know who they are. We don't know them from Adam. We've never seen them before. Are you an Orthodox Christian? Yes. I mean, they're going to answer. Most likely, they're going to answer yes. Even if they're not Orthodox, they're going to answer yes. The real question is, who is your bishop?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if there's some hesitation there, I mean, I'm not saying necessarily that this should, replace the answer. are you Orthodox? But it really gets to the heart of the matter fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I don't like having confrontations at the chalice.
Yes.
But I don't like to make the same mistake twice, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So this is the real issue, because what puts us in communion with each other is if our bishops are in communion with each other, then we're in communion with each other.
Yes.
So we need to ask.
Well, in my experience, I mean, kind of pulling this thread of Orthodox Christians who live in the metropolitan area and come to our parish, part of the rationale for the founding of our church and how we present our parish is to address a geographical need. And so we're essentially the parish on the east side of town. And so we do encounter people who are members of other parishes, but we are the closest parish to them. And so we will present it as, ideally, you should be a member of your local parish. We understand that there's history and commitment to other parishes, but are you interested in being a part of us because we are in your local community and are your local parish? And that tends to be the sort of thing that we focus on. I know that in some cases, and I'll even have that. I'll have people who will come and visit who I know they drive by at least one parish to get to us. And on their first appearance, I'll say, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you like our parish. But did you know that there is a parish that you drove by to get here? and if it is that sort of thing, we're in the area, we're trying to figure out where to go to church. I'll say, well, you drove by a parish that might be more convenient, and
in the
local community.
Yeah, in the commuter society we live in, it doesn't matter anymore. Yep. 40 years ago, it would have been unthinkable, and now we don't give it a second thought. And if we don't know the parishioner standing to the left or the right of us in the congregation, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Father Matthew, we're running out of time here. We're running up on the 30-minute mark.
Yes.
But I think if I have a takeaway on this, for my personal benefit, it's that we need to work as hard at integrating Orthodox Christians who are coming to our parish, newly coming to our parish. We need to work as hard at integrating them as we're working on integrating inquirers and catechumens into the life of the church. And that's a really strong point, and I thank you for that.
Yes.
So thank you again, Father Matthew, and for all of you who were listening and watching today. Every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time here on Facebook and the Department of Missions and Evangelism page. God bless you and take care. Bye-bye. Okay, are you still there?
I'm